Welcome back, guys. I figured out what was wrong with the router. We were doing a couple things wrong. The first is require authentication. This guy was causing a problem. We go into auth here. I'm not exporting default. And we're going to be changing this later. Don't worry about that. But for now, that should no longer cause a problem. We can uncomment this because I know what the problem is now. If we look at just the documentation for React Router, they are using a new library called React Router DOM. They basically split things up a little bit, so we're going to copy that and add that to our project. And then we're also, history is in a separate package as well, so we're going to add both of those. And then if we want to change pages now, what we're going to be doing is we're going to create history like this. And then what we're going to do is we add the history to the router like that, and then we push history like this instead of using browser history. And notice how this is a browser router now. So React Router DOM now has a route and a browser router. So I'll have my browser router here, and we no longer need that React Redux thing, and we can still create history in the store here. So we're just going to import create history, and just make sure I have this right and copy that. So we import it, and then we can put it at the bottom, and then we just create a history. Export const history is equal to, and then we have to actually create it. And now here we import history. Awesome. Now if we come back to the application and look in console, router may only have one child. So this is something we'll add later, but we're basically going to copy the main and put it here. That way everything looks nice. And not sure what happened there. Reload. I'm noting a div around everything for now, and looks like we are out of errors. And cool, we're able to see it looks like it rendered the home page, I think. All those enroll. So let's test this. So let's just put a H1 that says hello, because I can't tell if just there's a problem with the recipe list or if I'm not actually rendering home right now. Alright, cool, we are rendering home. That looks nice. And actually, before we continue, we can actually basically do the same thing that main does. So we can copy this and put that here. Oops. So we're going to have a container around everything instead of this div. And we have a header. And then container, and then a nav bar. And we're not going to be passing any props to it, at least not right now. So let's import nav bar. And then link header. Link is coming from React Router. And you can get it from React Router DOM now. So now I'll link. Cool. Now header and container, those are coming from Semantic UI. Copy, paste those over as well. Alright, now we can refresh and we should see stuff here. The nav bar might be a little messed up, so we'll have to see how that looks. Looks like there's a problem with the console. Okay, so I'm assuming the nav bar has a problem. We're using has own. So browser history is something that's no longer being used. So instead you just get history from the store, which is going to be up and then into the store. Now we just do history. So find and replace history or browser history with history. Okay, so we're expecting the user to be here because we're using user data. We're also expecting to have access to log out. So notice we really need to be connected to, it looks like we need to be connected to, what's it called? The Redux store so we can get all this information. Also, looks like there's a problem. Are we assuming? Oh, I guess because user is not even defined here. Okay. So how we're going to do that is actually very similar to how we're doing it here. So new folder, navbar. We're going to put navbar inside of navbar. We're going to rename it to view. And then we can copy index, put index into here. And now, for example, we can get log out. And I think that was the only one it needed. I'll double check. And then here it needed the user. So if I view the recipe here, it gets the user. Okay. Email, and actually has own property data. That's not really a thing. So dot values. So basically we want to check if there is a current user, right? I'm assuming that's what it's doing. Yep. So we're checking if there is a current user. One way to do that is to check how many values there. Check if it's an empty object. So we can do object.values.length. So if it's an empty object, we know this will evaluate to 0, and then we'll show a logged out view. So, yep, looks like logout's the only function we needed. Don't need that anymore. Awesome. Now we can put that in the props. Okay, so now navbar is connected to Redux state, and now it can get all this information that it needs. So let's refresh the page. Cannot read undefined property. So it looks like the user is undefined, even though we're passing in the user here. So console.log this.props. So let's just see what the props look like. And let's export const. Sorry, not export const, export default. Up here. And this is actually another class that can be a peer function, so I might change that in a second before I figure out why the props are getting messed up. Okay, I didn't even print this. Oh, it's not even getting a problem there. Where am I calling has own property? Okay, cannot read property has own property of undefined inside of navbar it says. And then has own. I'm not even doing it here. That's super weird. Inside of navbar. Oh, you know what? You know what's happening, guys? It's because I changed this now. We have to reset the server. Sometimes this happens where it doesn't read this thing. It doesn't, because I changed the folder, that I changed this to a folder and then we're grabbing that. Sometimes it gets messed up. Because it used to be a file, now it's a folder. So I think that was the problem. Yes? Yes. Okay, so now we can't find store. So you go up one, Oh, we should be going up 2 now. Okay, cool. Now we see this is a nice navigation bar. And the first thing I want to do is just see if it'll take us to a sign up page. Yes, it does. Awesome. And it'll take us to a login page. Yep. Alright, so it'll take us to all the pages. That's good. So now we need to just work on each page being rendered. So the first one we'll work on is the home page. So on the home page, we should be seeing recipes here. And we're passing this .props. And that's not what I really want to be doing. I want to say recipes equal to this .props.recipes. Also, I want to move navbar to become a pure function, which I'll change after I do this. So what I like is using the dev tool here, and I can just see if it's getting the props it should be. So this route here, home route, is just getting an empty array of recipes. And oh, that's because the server's not on. So that would be the back end here. Yep. Oops. I think I yarned everything. I can do npm start. Okay, cool. Have the server running. We can refresh this now. So I guess we should get add recipe working then, because it looks like this could be working correctly. We just actually don't have any recipes. But actually what I'll do next is I want to convert this to a pure function. So unless you really need any of the components, you should be using pure functions. So that's what I'm going to be doing. So this will now be that. And by any of the functions, I mean like component will mount, or maybe the constructor, or something like that. And we don't actually need any of that. So the props that we'll be using is we're going to need access to the user. And really what we need access to, yep, actually is just the user. And then log out, I believe. So there'll be some other functions that we need, which we can just put up here. This will be const logged in. Do an arrow function here. And put that there. We could tab everything over. Oops. Alright, I can do the same thing for logged out. Const logged out. Alright, and notice how this one doesn't use any of this, but this one needs to have the user and logout. So here we'll do email and logout. So we'll just do email logout. Now down here, what we really want to do is now we can actually just say so we can check the length of the user. And if it is, we do logged in. Logged in needs both the user.email and what was the other thing? Logout. And logged out doesn't need anything. And get rid of that, get rid of that. So you can notice how when converting this to a pure function, we're actually simplifying it a lot. Okay. Oh, and we don't need this component. So let's make sure it renders the same and looks good. Still takes us to sign up, log in. You can notice it's changing up there. Okay, that's good. So the nav bar is good. I think the next thing we want to do is get the auth thing working, because we really need the auth thing to work to be able to then make sure a user is logged in, and then we can start creating recipes to make sure that functionality is working. So we'll be messing with this in the next video.